Hello, and welcome to Odds on Premier League Match Day 23. Premier League is not stopping this week. We had plenty of good games in the middle of the week. For instance, finishing with this Wolves 3, Man United 4, and we are back to enjoy a very good weekend with, for instance, Arsenal Liverpool, and with Tom Rennie's tips. Tom, you were spot on in the middle of the week with your ACA correct and some prop bets or random bets also correct. Hello.
Yes, hello. I was very happy with last week. Half the games right, which was nice. The Liverpool game, all of my bets came in, the top tip and the subsidiary bets as well. So everyone listening would have made some money on that one. João Palhinha did get booked, which I liked, but it didn't double up with a Fulham win. No, there was 7 or 8 shots in that game, which was wild. So yeah, very close on a few, spot on a few. Aka comes in. I'm happy with that.
Do you have the odds for Nunez, for instance, hitting the woodwork twice?
Yeah, it's unfortunately Darwin Núñez to hit the post. We have to pay them because it's definitely going to happen. So it's not worth doing.
This could be a very nice side bet, for instance, for this great Arsenal Liverpool. Well, Tom, let's go on with the show. Remember, guys, to press the like and subscribe. Now let's go on with the show. Remember as well that for this weekend you can get this great welcome offer thanks to Oddspedia and 1xBet and get bonus 130%. Use the promo code and the link we have in the description. Well, of course, the best game this weekend is the Arsenal-Liverpool I was mentioning on Sunday, but still some pretty good games, interesting ones. For instance, the first one, Everton Tottenham, because Everton are now in the bottom 3 with all the points deduction, even if they've won 8 games this season, but they are struggling. Lately, they got only a point against Fulham. Luton won. So that's 5 winless games for Everton, and now they host the Spurs in the top 4, back in the top 4 after beating Brentford. Tom, this is a tricky one, and we can see it in the odds.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you make a good point on Everton that the 10-point deduction is so consequential for them at this point, because a few weeks ago they went on a nice winning run, 3 or 4 wins in a row, and we started to think, actually, even with a 10-point deduction, they'll be all right, Everton. And since then, last 5 games, 2 points picked up, 3 defeats, and 2 draws in their last 2 games. They probably should have, in the end, won at Fulham. I know Fulham had their chances, but in the dying moments at 0-0, a Sean Dyche team with a couple of corners, with a 6-foot-plus striker, I thought they would win. And I laid some late money on Everton to win in that game from the 80th minute. Beto cost me. But I have no confidence in them. You can't with the record they currently have. I think the pressure now of being in the bottom 3 as they are, with Luton's surprise win over Brighton as well, I think that's going to start really being an issue now for Sean Dyche's side. There's no surprise for me that Abdoulaye Doucouré being out injured, he looks like he'll miss this one as well, has changed their fortunes. He was a kind of 1 in 3 goal scorer for Everton. Without him, who scores? Calvert-Lewin stopped scoring, and that's kind of it for Everton's goal-scoring possibilities unless they get a corner. So no confidence in them here, and there's no way I'm putting my money on them. And Tottenham Hotspur, there's that great start to the season, then an extended blip after the Chelsea game because of injuries and suspensions and all sorts of problems they got from that game. But look at them across this season. Away from home, they're the 4th best team in the league with 5 victories. They have lost 2 of the last 5, I know, but in general, even when they've lost, their performances have been pretty good. And they find themselves right now following that victory in midweek and 2 wins in the last 3. 4th in the table, back above Villa. Villa just falling away a bit. West Ham, Man U, Newcastle, that next pack aren't really going to catch them. And suddenly, they're looking ahead again at where Arsenal are, where Man City are. They are 3 points behind City and Arsenal. Really commendable and respectable season. And there's only one result I can see here. That is a Tottenham Hotspur win. How do they do it? Well, I'm looking at the patterns of victories and losses for Everton as opposed to Spurs. Though I will say that Spurs, they do normally score a lot of goals. I appreciate that. But against Everton in recent times, at home, they didn't concede against Aston Villa, 0-0 draw in that game. They conceded very few in games before that. Even the loss against Tottenham finished 2-1. I think very similar to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium game. Look at Tottenham win and under 3.5 goals in the match. That is a really conservative bet for a 1-0, a 2-0, a 2-1 to Tottenham. And the other thing I like here, Richarlison, once to Everton, £50 million player, 7 goals in 10. That's really good for Richarlison in recent times. So Richarlison scores and Tottenham win is 4-1. Take it.
8 goals this season for Richarlison. Good mark now that Son is still in the Asian Cup. By the way, South Korea playing with Australia on Friday. Tottenham to win pays really good, to be honest. Let's see if they are also able to win away. It's 1 win in the last 5 on the road. Next one, Brighton, Crystal Palace. Brighton destroyed by Luton Town in a miserable first half. They conceded really early and they couldn't go back to the game. It's only 1 victory in the last 7 games. But I guess if you want to win again at home, Palace should be a good team because they are very poor away when they are playing away from home, except if they are playing in Manchester, and they struggle even to beat Sheffield United.
Yeah, I mean, look, with Brighton right now, I think it's 3 wins in 12 plus games at home this season, 4 victories and 5 draws. They really struggle at the moment to convert good performances into victories. Did someone say Graham Potter's back? I don't know. It's almost like Roberto De Zerbi hasn't made the massive improvements that we sort of spoke about a lot with Brighton last season. This is not too dissimilar to what Potter was delivering. And he needs to improve on that. He needs to get goals from more people. He needs to get João Pedro scoring, if fit for this one, from open play and not just get a penalty and try and convert that. And there's been so many times this season where they've looked promising, but have failed to score that second goal. The second goal has been the problem for Brighton for so much of this season, for so much of their home campaign. 0-0 draws, 1-1 draws have dogged them since November. And I think it's going to be a really, really tough game for them. I've actually changed my bet on this one because I was going to go draw, both teams score. But then I watched Crystal Palace in midweek. And yes, they played pretty well against Sheffield United at times, though defensively suspect. But there's doubts this morning about Aberi Eze. Looks like there's a possibility he may well miss this one. Came off in the game against the Blades in midweek. Doubts about Elise as well as we speak. So we'll see if he's available or not. Plus, Palace's away form just hasn't been up to snuff this season. 3 victories in their 11 games away from home this campaign, but none in the last 5. So I actually think it might be quite tight here. I do think both teams score still because I think that's come in for all but 3 or 4 games for Brighton this season. But I do back Brighton to get the second goal in this one. I think they've got goal scoring potential and Palace without Eze will not. Brighton win. No, not worth your time for 1.75, but take the both teams to score, which has come in 17 times this year or so, 3.25. Brighton win, both teams score. Take it.
Okay, our friend Onofrios is telling us actually draw and both teams to score. 1-1. It came both teams to score in 18 games for Brighton this season. And Palace, they are 6 points away from the relegation zone. There we have Burnley. Very difficult for them to stay in the Premier League this season, but if they want to stay, for sure, this is the last call. Is 7 points away right now from Luton Town and Fulham. They are also in a bad moment. They lost the last 5 away games. They are the second worst team away from home with only 6 points. But it's true as well that this season Fulham had won this kind of games where they are playing the bottom 3. They are usually getting the points.
I keep thinking when it comes to Burnley of a quote attributed to the great Bill Shankly when he spoke about West Ham in the 1960s or 70s. And he said, I love West Ham. Good club, family club, 3 points. And that's the thing with Burnley right now. Everyone sort of likes them. They sort of play okay. Everyone likes Vincent Kompany and his kind of suit and cap combo. And you're going to beat them. And again, it was a valiant effort against Man City in midweek. City got the job done, closed the game down exactly as we predicted, though that consolation goal scuppered our bet, which was frustrating. But, it just, at this point, I don't know what to say about Burnley. They don't play Premier League At times you think, oh, that's good. And then they don't convert the chances. They've not got a Premier League striker. They've got a few interesting looking players, and they'll be the best team in the Championship next year. As you mentioned, worst team at home in the Premier League this season. In terms of Fulham, you mentioned it, second worst team away from home. Still possible they could get dragged into a relegation battle, though I don't think so. Armando Broja coming in on loan on transfer deadline day from Chelsea, I think is interesting. I think they are trying to kind of cut their losses with Raul Jimenez, who had a nice couple of 2-3 game run, but beyond that, injured again, out of form again, and there isn't really a backup of note of the 2 or 3 players that have played there. Vinicius, for example, hasn't offered a great deal this season. So, tricky one, this, because the form guide tells you nothing from this game. I would say Fulham have a slightly better squad, but not particularly. So, for me, it just screams draw. It screams probably a 0-0 draw. It screams more than likely a 1-1 draw. I don't think either team has the ability to get over the line with a second goal. If you are looking for a winner, if you don't want to go draw, I would probably just shade for Burnley because they are the home team and Fulham's away form is so bad. And sometimes being at home does get you over the line in games like this. But look, it's 2 pretty average teams, 2 pretty poor teams meeting at Turf Moor. Throw a draw in your accumulator and you might make some money.
Okay, the draw pays very well indeed for this game. Next one, Newcastle, Luton Town. This one is difficult to make money if you are backing Newcastle. Finally, they gave their best away from home. It was a big surprise, to be honest, their victory in Villa Park. But be careful as well, because we have Luton Town surprising everyone in this Premier League. Now they are out of the bottom 3. Away from home is 8 points with only 2 wins. They are far better when they play at home, of course.
Yeah, I mean, Newcastle, I'm really struggling with Newcastle this season. The whole campaign's been a write-off, really, bar 2 brilliant days. Number 1 was the game against Paris Saint-Germain. The other one was a couple of days ago at Villa Park. I know they thrashed them on the opening day of the season at St. James's Park, but I think the victory in midweek was incredibly impressive, you know. It was an even game, relatively, again, but Newcastle just have the sign over Villa this season. Fabian Schär, goal-scoring centre-half, invaluable to your team. But then we go to this game, and again, I've got to talk injuries. Isak injured in that game. Doubts about him. Callum Wilson, I'm not sure, will be pushed back for this game. So the central striker position is again vacant for Newcastle. Joe Linton probably won't play for Newcastle again, so you lose the energy in midfield. And as much as Lewis Miley and Sean Longstaff are decent players, it's not the top 6 midfield they had last campaign, nor the one they envisaged with Tonali and Joe Linton with Bruno Guimaraes. So loads of issues still with Newcastle. But Luton's away form, as you mentioned, is simply not good enough. Really like Adebayo up front. I think his second goal of his hat-trick in midweek against Brighton was a brilliant Ian Wright-esque striker goal to go with those great sniffer instincts that he's shown this season. And I think you follow the pattern with Luton Town and with Newcastle. The vast majority of Newcastle's wins this season at home, and the vast majority of their wins at home over the last couple of seasons have been reasonably narrow. Score a couple of goals and shut that game down. The thrashings the first few weeks of this season are long gone. And for Luton, they have been in every game this year, but every game they've lost, it's been 1-0, 1-2, 2-0. Very competitive in the game, but I don't think able to go to Newcastle and win. So Newcastle to win on its own, on the current form, with the current players, not good enough at 1.47. So look for your under markets here. Really conservative to go under 3.5. I'm taking under 2.5 at 4.33. I think Newcastle score, more than likely Anthony Gordon, who's one of the only goal scorers left in the team, brings it at 4.33, which seems wildly, wildly high. If you feel like you don't want to be so daring, you can go with Newcastle, make it under 3.5. It still brings you under 2-1 at 2.38, but I'd feel pretty confident you're going to get some money back on that.
Some other options from our audience. Mill is going for Newcastle and over 1.5 goals. So with 2 goals, you have your bet. Ian thinks Luton is going to be in the score sheet. And Mam Spaghetti, Newcastle to win the first half. Next game, Tom, Newcastle beat Aston Villa in Villa Park. It was the first defeat for Aston Villa at Villa Park, but everything started to go south with Aston Villa when they played Sheffield United at home It's 22nd of December. Everyone thought at that time that Aston Villa was going to thrash Sheffield United, and they did not. They didn't get the chance to be on top of the table, and since then they are dropping, and especially they are weak when they play away from home, or weaker when they play away from home. I don't know if this could be a tricky game, or Sheffield United are so poor that we should trust Aston Villa.
I think Sheffield United have improved, I've got to say, under Chris Wilder. And the reason they've improved is that he's come in and been a bit more sort of gung-ho. Like, we're going down here. We've got, what have they got, 10 points in early February? They're not going to make it. They're just not going to make it at this point. They were never really going to make it, but there was time to turn things around. The time is petering out. The sand is dropping through the hourglass, and I don't think they're going to. So Wilder has come in and sort of said, right, let's take a swing. And that led to the draw against West Ham, though diabolical refereeing and a dodgy penalty also helped. It led to the loss against Luton, sure, but 2 goals scored, and the victory over Brentford as well. They are trying now to win games, when I think previously, I don't know whether it was confidence or whether it was a lack of risk. I don't know under the previous manager, but they are doing it now under a real fighter in Chris Wilder. And so that leads me to think they can score in this game against an Aston Villa team who, you mentioned it, if their away form could have matched their home form this season, they might still be in the title race. They might still be in the Champions League kind of positions. But 2 victories away in their last 5. To not beat Man U at 2-0 up, I thought before, or just after Christmas Eve, Boxing Day, was one of the worst kind of tactical performances of any team this season. And the way they've played away from home, the kind of dedication to a Postecoglou-esque high line at times has been confusing. And maybe that led to slightly more caution in the Everton game a couple of weeks ago, which led to the 0-0. But look, I'm not betting any money on a Sheffield United wins. That leads me to a Villa victory. Villa victory at 1.65 is no good, even with their away form. I think that take both teams to score. The reason I would take that is because Sheffield United are scoring goals right now, but I think Villa can outscore them. And so I'll take that as my top bet here as a 2-1. Villa winning both teams to score. The other thing I quite like here is that Ollie Watkins went through a bit of a drought not too long ago and was struggling to find the back of the net. And the one positive from the game against Newcastle last time out is that Ollie Watkins scored. So Watkins scoring, hoping for him that takes him on a bit of a run. I think he will score in this game, as I think Villa will score. If you feel less confident in both teams to score, take Watkins and Villa win. Also brings you in at 3.
Aston Villa, they are 8th in the away standings with 4 defeats and 19 goals conceded. That's why their away form is a bit concerning. That's why Millie, for instance, is picking Sheffield United +2 in the Asian handicap. So this is very conservative. I guess the odds are very low for that bet. Let's move on to the games we have on Sunday. First one is Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest. Forest only 2 points away from Everton. It was absolutely dull and boring. The game I watched against Arsenal is back-to-back defeats because they also lost to Brentford. Before that, Bournemouth, I think you went to the West Ham game, Tom, and you weren't very happy about the outcome. I don't know if you like your friend Iraola and the performance of Bournemouth in the east of London.
No, I wasn't impressed by Bournemouth at all, actually. I think West Ham, who we'll speak about later, were very to not win that game. It said a lot about them, really. They weren't as risk-taking as maybe they could have been against a West Ham team who looked totally confused by whatever they were trying to do on the night. They had their chances first half, and if Semenyo gets the second they should have got with the chance he got. Game's totally different. But in the end, the goal they scored was gifted to them by Calvin Phillips. Beyond that, didn't dominate the game, didn't create too many chances, and I wasn't particularly impressed, if I'm honest. But I have been impressed by the turnaround at Bournemouth, taken in the macro. I think in September, start of October, Iraola could have got him, and he's turned it around. He has got better performances out of Bournemouth in a 2-month period. You know, Solanke scores goals, so bet on Solanke to score every game right now because it keeps on coming in. Really impressed by him, I've got to say. And Alex Scott in midfield, there were some lovely moments, lovely touches, lovely turns by him. I think he elevates what they can do, Bournemouth in midfield in transition from their back line to getting it through to runners because he is so difficult to get the ball off. So yes and no is my answer to whether I was impressed by Bournemouth. In terms of Nottingham Forest, I was not impressed by them against Arsenal, I've got to say. But what is Nuno going to do? Steve Cooper, when he was in charge of Forest, he had a bit more of a, not attacking flair because they struggle, but I think he was trying to score goals. I think Nuno is a bit more of a David Moyes school kind of guy. He is looking to close the game down, don't make a mistake, nick a chance if you get it. And I don't know whether it lends itself to a team with Morgan Gibbs-White and Anthony Elanga and now Gio Reyna. So we'll see, right? I think that maybe Forest's best chance to win this game is to get on the front foot and try and attack. But I don't think Nuno is going to be capable of doing that. So how's this game going to go? Such a tricky one, this. I think you don't bet on Forest because their away form this season has just been so poor. I know it's been a different manager a lot of the time, and Nuno picked up a couple of decent results. Newcastle victory most notably, but 2 wins away all season doesn't give me enough. Bournemouth, I know at home across the campaign have been poor, but across the past 4 games, 2 victories in that run. One against Newcastle, impressive. The one against Fulham, I thought, impressive as well. So Bournemouth win at 1.75 is ludicrously short. That is not worth your time. There's 2 things here I'd pick out. Number 1 is Solanke scores and Bournemouth win. That brings you above the threshold. And if Bournemouth wins, Solanke usually scores. And the other thing, one of my favourites, take the group bet here. 1-0, 2-0 or 2-1. It brings you in at double your money. And if you look at the way Bournemouth have won games this season, in general, they have been a bit like that. The Newcastle 2-0 victory, I think, is a great example of that a few games ago. It's relatively tight, but they do score the goals to get over the line. They've been my favourites here.
I was checking Nuno's age. He's only 50. I saw him in the game against Arsenal. He looked 70 or something like this, even if he has the best agent in the world and getting very good contracts. I don't understand why he's that successful to have a bench, to be honest, in the Premier League. But it's been ages without performing well, I think, with his teams. And it's so boring, to be honest. But there you have Nuno Espiritu Santo in another bench in the Premier League. But very, very boring. Well, both teams to score, Bournemouth and over 2.5 goals. For Ian, let's see if he manages to keep Nottingham Forest in the Premier League. This season is easier than ever, but it's only 2 points away from Everton. Next one is Chelsea Wolves, former Nuno Espiritu Santo team, much more entertaining this season, and they are doing better actually in the 11th spot. They ruined their great equalizer against Man United in the very last minute, but it was a very entertaining game. Also, Chelsea, they are so crap, Tom, that they are very entertaining because they should have conceded 6-7 goals. They play with no defense. The only nice player is Nkunku. The other were absolutely rubbish.
Yeah, but on the positive side, all of our bets came in for Liverpool-Chelsea. So, you know, I can't feel too...
scored by Diego Jota. So what the defenders were thinking?
Well, I think they were thinking that Thiago Silva is 40 and Benoit Badiashile is not very good. You know, that's it's bad defending all round for both those guys. I mean, look, they were bad. Absolutely, they were bad. I take that completely and I agree with you completely. And we predicted it on the show a couple of days ago. But there are still green shoots at Chelsea. I do still think that they look a really good upper mid-table Premier League side at points. Defensively, they are bad. They are a bad... unit. I think maybe in the second half when Disasi went central alongside Thiago, they looked better, but still not particularly good. Still no Reece James, and Ben Chilwell looked a bit of a ropey player on the game at Anfield. Went off at half time. Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez is a poor central midfield pairing too. Enzo, I hope he's not in the Premier League next season. The league doesn't suit him. I don't know what he does. He's so ineffective. He's a kind of nothing player for Chelsea. For the money spent, you'd try and find a new home for him if you could. Been a long time now. And also, they played Cole Palmer false 9 in midweek. Didn't work. He drops back a little bit deeper for this game because you mentioned it. There was a bright spot. Nkunku. And I think him being fit, Nicholas Jackson being back from AFCON, gives them the 2 options they need in the Pochettino setup. So I do fancy Chelsea to win here, mainly because I think Nkunku is going to make such a big difference to them. In their usual style, they create plenty of chances but can't take them. Plus, at home, if you look at their form across the season, but mainly in the last 4, they've won all 4 of them. Was it pretty? No. Did many people watching this watch these games? No. But 2-0 against Sheffield United, 2-1 against Crystal Palace, 1-0 against Fulham. Go there, get the job done, keep it tight, get the win. And I think it's going to follow a similar pattern here. For Wolves, brilliant game to watch against Man U in midweek, but the same deficiencies continue to show themselves. Defensively, they concede a lot of goals. Offensively, late on in Neto and Cunha and Sarabia, they are players who can give you some late drama, but incredibly inconsistent. And away from home this season, Wolves have been very, very poor. I've seen them a couple of times this year, and they've offered nothing really on the road, bar when they played Brentford. They just haven't really contributed away from home this season. So look at the Chelsea form. Go with them to win. 1.60 is no good. Look at the fact they have won 1-0 and 2-0 in the last 3. Take them to win to nil. That brings you double your money. And I might throw in Nkunku as the scorer in there too.
For scorers, we have Pedro Neto to score for Ian or Palmer. For just me, 2 middle table teams. You said it some shows ago that Chelsea is just an average team and they are doing what an average team does, mid-table, 10th, and been completely a nightmare also for bettors because they usually disappoint us. Next game is Man United West Ham in the very entertaining game you mentioned, Wolves Man United. I guess for the Man United fans, it ended well, but you cannot concede 2 goals the way Man United conceded the last 2 in the last minutes when even Ten Hag brought in Maguire, for instance, to defend that result. But the good points is that Rashford scored even when he parties in Belfast, and the goal scored by Maino was brilliant. Tom, how do you see this one? Man United very favorite. We usually don't see Man United this favorite lately, actually.
Yeah, I mean, maybe all the players after the victory on Thursday went down to the pub, had a few tequilas with Marcus Rashford, because obviously it works, right? So maybe they need to get loose a little bit and have some fun, and that's unlocked something in Manchester United. The first 45 minutes was their best 45 minutes of the entire season against Wolverhampton Wanderers. I think the Rashford-Højlund link-up worked for one of the few times in the Premier League it's worked this season. I think Kobe Mainu, who is being talked up a bit too much for me, but I think he put in a really impressive performance across the game in midweek. And I think you're just seeing, Casemiro coming back and getting into a bit of game form. Martinez coming back, getting into a bit of game form. We did reference it a lot this season. They were missing a lot of key players across the campaign, Manchester United. We did give them that out a lot, and them coming back has made a difference. I think scoring goals, Højlund scoring, Rashford scoring, everyone getting slightly better, big confidence-building win. I think that's the reason they are down at 1.81. The first thing you would do if you were putting a bet on this morning is bet on Man United, because, again, the market loves Manchester United, and them to win is invariably not a good bet. And the interesting thing about this is that Man U and West Ham are so similar. They're so similar in so many ways. The way they set up, the low block tactics, the risk-averse way they play. At times this season, both of them have impressed. At times this season, they have been so difficult to watch. And with West Ham, I went to the game, as I mentioned, on Thursday, and David Moyes, I think, has made a huge error here in signing Calvin Phillips. He looked like a man who'd never played football in his life, let alone someone who'd barely played for Man City. And to accommodate Calvin Phillips, he moved players all over the field. James Ward-Prowse was on the wing, which was bizarre. Thomas Souček was filling in at centre forward at times. That was bizarre. I think he tried to accommodate Calvin Phillips, and West Ham only improved when Phillips went off the field. And I think for West Ham's sake, Phillips needs to go back to where he belongs, the subs bench, for this game, and West Ham go back to kind of what they are good at, which is a midfield 3 that didn't need changing. Souček's never going to get dropped, and Ward-Prowse and Alvarez are very effective players. You can't take them out. And a front 3 that revolves around getting Kudus and Bowen in behind. They keep swapping and moving and getting in different positions, and find someone to play on left wing to cover Paqueta. Maybe Ben Rama, considering his move to Lyon fell through on transfer deadline day, despite being pictured in the Lyon tracksuit. Bizarre West Ham didn't buy a left winger in the window, by the way, but there we are. Lots of people have those sob stories. How's this game going to go? Well, I actually think with the way these two teams set up, if West Ham survive the first 10 minutes, I think the first half might be one to miss. I think just the low block tactics, the risk-averse tactics of both lead me to think this game will be a draw at half-time. But I do feel that Man U, I think turn to corner might be too strong, but I do think in the second half they will come on stronger. And West Ham, at the moment, I have no confidence in West Ham. I think the midweek game has kind of shaken that brief moment of thinking, yeah, maybe they can do something this season. They're unbeaten in 6, so I don't discount the draw in totality here. But I think this will say level, level, level as long as the game goes. And Man U now have the opportunity to change games from the bench. And I think they can do that. West Ham can't because they were so desperate seemingly to sell their bench during the January transfer window. So Man U to win is no good, but a draw at half-time and Man U win the second half, coming on strong as the game goes on, that looks really nice. 5 seems high to me, so I'll take that.
No wins in the last 5 for West Ham in all competitions. Arwar is adding up Rashford to score or assist, and Kao both teams to score since Onana is in the pitch. He's going for both teams to score is always a good idea, to be honest. And the game of the games this weekend, Arsenal, Liverpool. First thing is the odds. Tom, I'm very surprised to see Arsenal favorite here. Liverpool with really high odds. Well, for me, is my favorite team in the Premier League. They are playing great. Is very entertaining watching them. They just need Núñez also to adapt and score more goals instead of hitting the woodwork. A lot of pride and emotion about Conor Bradley and his game in the weekend or in the middle of the week. Tom, and Arsenal, they must win here to be back in the title race. Remember that these two teams met already in the Emirates. It was in the FA Cup and Liverpool won 2-0. Do you expect a similar game, more similar to the one we saw at Anfield, 1-1 in the first part of the season?
What a great question. I don't know what to expect, if I'm honest. I think in terms of the game, firstly, I'd make Liverpool favourites. I agree with you. I think the odds are interesting here. And at double your money for a Liverpool win this season, I might just take that. You know, I've got a couple of bets for you to look at in a minute, but I do think 3.24 for Liverpool to win. I'm really surprised by that. And so I would take that now, considering Liverpool have won at Emirates this season already, as you mentioned. Arsenal, I think that they are still in desperate need of confidence in that front three. I think it was telling that Gabriel Martinelli was dropped for the game against Nottingham Forest in midweek, because I think he has been, I don't want to sort of scapegoat him here because there are other issues, but I do think his incredible drop-off in form has been really significant this season. And him coming off for Kai Havertz, I should say, in the game against Forest in midweek, I think was quite telling. I think that potentially I'd be looking at maybe developing Kai Havertz or Leandro Trossard on that left-hand side, because Martinelli simply has not delivered across this campaign. Saka has, but to a lesser extent. And I was interested in the comments of Gabriel Jesus following his sort of sniffers goal against Forest in midweek on Tuesday, when he said, I've got to adapt my game to be that guy, or words to that effect. And he does. They need someone in the 6-yard box scoring goals. They don't need a striker drifting out left wing, right wing, and getting involved in the build-up play. They just don't need it. Their build-up play is brilliant with the players they have, and they don't need the striker going out there just through boredom. So he needs to stay more central. Everyone else needs to up their game. If that happens, Arsenal can still be champions this season, but they can't without winning this match. I think it'll be quite tight. If you look at Arsenal games this season, they haven't conceded a lot at home this campaign. Pretty tight. 1 goal every sort of game, just under 1 goal a game, 10 and 11. It's pretty decent, I think. And I think as well that when they have won this season, they have won, if you look at the 2-0 against Brighton, the 5-0 against Crystal Palace, the 5-0 against Sheffield United, they've tended to do it without conceding in games. So they're not a good chaser, but they are good front runners. And I think if you're looking for an Arsenal win, you look at Arsenal scoring the first goal and going on to win. For Liverpool, brilliant against Chelsea. Superb performance. One of the best performances by any team, I think, in the Premier League this season. Darwin Núñez, the agent of chaos that is. 12 shots at one point I worked out he had, and he made only 7 passes to teammates, which I thought was a brilliant stat around 75 minutes in. He then sets up Luis Diaz, of course. Maybe less shots and a bit more passing might do him a favour. But defensively strong. Konate, I think, is as good as Virgil van Dijk on current form. He's been brilliant. Robertson coming back in. I think he might start this game. Changes the dynamic completely at left back. I think you have to continue with Conor Bradley at right back, even though Alexander-Arnold's back and fit. Might see Alexander-Arnold move into midfield, replacing maybe Curtis Jones. Then you've got Szoboszlai and McAllister alongside, pretty strong trio of players. And even without Salah, it's an embarrassment of attacking riches for Liverpool. I would certainly play Jota, and I think maybe Diaz and another. Nunes maybe deserves to start on the chaos factor, but the consistency factor isn't quite there. So how's this game going to go? Well, I don't discount the draw, and I think, frankly, at 3.84, I'll take that because I think Arsenal are very tough to beat, but I think Liverpool, by the same token, are the same. So take the draw at 3.84, take Liverpool at 3.24. I'd make them ever so slight favourites. The other thing I'll pick out here is that I don't see this being a drab 0-0. I know a lot of these games are, but I think Arsenal are going to be flying in that first 20 minutes. I think Liverpool's counter-attacking play is legendary at this point. And for me, I would just shade for Liverpool. And I'd shade for them on the 3.24, but I'd also shade for them on the both teams to score element of things as well. Looking at games against Crystal Palace and Man City for Liverpool's ability to score away from home this season. Take Liverpool win and take both teams to score, and Liverpool become title favourites with this win, and Arsenal out the race.
Well, the odds are brilliant to go for the Liverpool win. As we were seeing, even the draw no bet for Liverpool is 2.3. This is so high. It's really good. Mom Spaghetti is going for double chance, for instance, and over 1.5 goals. This is also a very good one. Sarwar also sees goals. We all expect a lot from this game. Hopefully, we are not disappointed. And the last game on Monday is Brentford, Man City. Man City won comfortably against Burnley, and the good news is that Kevin De Bruyne started the game and Haaland came back. So now, for the important months of the season, February, March, April, they have a full squad, even with Julian Alvarez scoring. So I guess Man City to win 1.48 is not that bad, considering the odds that we usually have for Man City.
Yeah, look, briefly on Brentford, Ivan Toney scoring, Neil Maupay scoring. I think with those players scoring with regularity from now until the end of the season, they'll be fine. So no great worries about Brentford moving forward this season, though when Toney goes, I do wonder if they can attract the players to not be in a relegation battle next season. And with Manchester City, it went exactly as we predicted against Burnley in midweek. They are not the 7-0 victors of seasons gone by. Having won everything now, they've just become a bit of a banal winning machine. And with Kevin De Bruyne and Erling Haaland coming back in, as you alluded to, you only see one result here. How's it going to go? Look, 1.48, I take your point entirely. It's longer than we usually see, but I still wouldn't take it. It still would require a huge lump on to make that worth your time. So look at the handicap market here. I know Brentford don't usually get stuffed. So -1, 2.10. It's not amazing here, but City just are not a great team to bet on unless you're going to put huge numbers down. So Asian handicap 1.5 brings you in at 2.24. I don't have the confidence right now that if they get 2-0 up, they'll go and score the third. And that's my big concern here. I want to see City win 4-0 and 5-0 a couple of games. If they do, we might start looking at -3.5s and things like that. But until then, if you want to make some money, and that's what we're here for, go for a conservative Asian handicap for City.
Good point from Man Spaghetti. Brentford won both games last season, 1-0 in London in May and 2-1 in Manchester.
One of them was pre-World Cup and one of them was the season was over. So I'm not taking that into my consideration, I've got to say.
Mm-hmm. Well, the stats are there, we have to say. Well, Tom, this is it for our show on Friday before this weekend. Your safe bet?
Well, you mentioned it. 1.48 for Man City is actually pretty good for Man City if you're throwing it into an ACCA. And so Man City to win at Brentford is my safe bet.
Mm-hmm. And is it in your ACCA?
It is in my ACCA because it brings us above the W money threshold. A 3-team ACCA, a treble as it was in midweek, which we won. Brighton to win against Crystal Palace, especially without Eze and potentially Elise. Newcastle will beat Luton at home. We all love Luton, but Newcastle do win the majority of their home games. Throw Man City in there as well with those surprising long odds, considering it's Man City. 3.8, really nice.
Really good. Are you a rugby guy, Tom, now that it's starting the Six Nations, or you are focusing football?
I do enjoy watching the Six Nations, mainly because I watch the rugby with my rugby-loving friends, and I ask them, what's offside? And that's like 25 minutes of chat. It's quite nice.
It is, especially if you go to a pub to watch the rugby games. Well, let's enjoy Premier League, Six Nations, and everything we have in sports. You have everything on Oddspedia. Tom, thank you. Bye-bye.